Who was the only president who never married? Answer: James Buchanan. When Buchanan was 28 years old, he was engaged to Anne Coleman of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The two quarreled, and she broke off the engagement. Shortly after, she died, an apparent suicide. Her family blamed Buchanan for the tragedy, and he never forgave himself. Quote, "I have lost the only earthly object of my affections," unquote, he said. Quote, "without whom life presents to me a dreary blank," unquote. Indeed, Buchanan never filled the void with another woman and threw himself into politics to escape his grief. During his presidency, his niece Harriet Lane served as White House hostess. Which president was nicknamed Old Rough and Ready? Answer: Zachary Taylor. Taylor had a distinguished military career, first as a commissioned lieutenant, then as captain in the War of 1812, a colonel in the Black Hawk War of 1932, a brigadier general in the Second Seminole War from 1837 to 1840, and as a general in the Mexican-American War from 1846 to 1847. It was during the Seminole War that his men, inspired by his disheveled appearance and unpretentious manner, assigned Taylor the moniker Old Rough and Ready. In the election of 1848, after leading the United States to victory in the Mexican-American War, Taylor's heroism and his catchy nickname won him the votes. Who was the only U.S. president to hold a patent? Answer: Abraham Lincoln. On May 22, 1849, Congressman Lincoln received a patent for his method of lifting boats over shoals. Lincoln was inspired to create such a device during a visit to Niagara Falls, where he saw a grounded boat moved from the shallows by forcing empty barrels under its sides. His patent model, now in the Smithsonian, was produced with help from Walter Davis, a mechanic from Springfield, Illinois. The patent was issued, but the invention was never produced. Which president was a tanner in his early life? Answer: Ulysses S. Grant. Grant's father was a tanner by trade, and young Ulysses was often called on to work in the tannery, a job he detested. The blood-soaked hides made him gag. But Grant, a skilled horse handler, gladly helped to haul wood, plow fields, and reap the harvest. His horsemanship served him well throughout his military career. Which president had a brief career as a cowboy? Answer: Theodore Roosevelt. A sickly boy who suffered from asthma, Roosevelt became a firm believer as an adult in the benefits of exercise. When his first wife, Alice Lee, died in 1884, the grieving widower traveled to the Dakota Badlands to become a cowboy. A tougher man moved back to New York 2 years later and lit up the political arena with his energy. As chief executive, this outdoorsman and hunter created the first 4 federal game reserves. Who was the only non-Protestant elected president? Answer: John F. Kennedy. Kennedy was Roman Catholic, and there was much talk during his presidential campaign, mostly by the Protestant clergy, about whether his allegiance would be to his pope or his country. The candidate was quick to confront the issue. In a speech to the Greater Houston Ministerial Association, Kennedy said, "I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote." Which president was offered professional football contracts by the Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers after college? Answer: Gerald Ford. Ford was a star center for the South High Trojans football team in Grand Rapids, Michigan. At the University of Michigan, he grabbed the spotlight as a senior, where he was named Most Valuable Player for the Wolverines and appeared in the 1935 Chicago Charities College All-Star Game against the Chicago Bears. Soon after, he was offered the opportunity to go pro, but opted to study law instead. He coached football at Yale before becoming a full-time law student there. Which president was called the Great Engineer? Answer: Herbert Hoover. Hoover earned a degree in geology from the newly opened Stanford University and was managing mines in Australia by the age of 23. After marrying Lou Henry, the couple moved to China, where Hoover served dual roles for the Chinese Imperial Bureau of Mines and for his British employers Bewick, Moring & Co. Hoover's success earned him the title of Great Engineer, as well as great wealth. Both a brilliant businessman and a millionaire, he was the people's choice for president in 1928, but he lost their confidence after the stock market crash of October 1929. Who was the only former president to later serve in the House of Representatives? Answer: John Quincy Adams. In November 1830, 20 months after leaving office, Adams was elected to represent Massachusetts in the U.S. House of Representatives. During his 17-year tenure in Congress, he supported the anti-slavery movement and promoted the establishment of the Smithsonian Institution. The well-educated but humorless Adams was considered a much more effective congressman than president. He held office right up until his death at the age of 80. Which president was once the youngest Navy pilot in the armed forces? Answer: George H.W. Bush. When Bush got his wings in World War II, he was the youngest pilot in the United States Navy. He enlisted on his 18th birthday and eventually flew 58 combat missions. On one mission over the Pacific, he was shot down by Japanese anti-aircraft fire and rescued by a U.S. submarine. He received the Distinguished Flying Cross for his bravery. How many presidents received the Nobel Peace Prize, and who were they? Answer: 4. Namely Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Jimmy Carter, and Barack Obama. Roosevelt received his in 1906 for his many efforts towards international peace, including his role in formulating the 1905 peace treaty between Russia and Japan. Wilson was awarded the Nobel in 1919 for founding the League of Nations after World War I. Carter was long retired from the presidency when he won the prize in 2002 for his efforts to advance human rights and achieve peaceful solutions to international conflicts. Obama was honored with a Nobel in 2009 for his work towards strengthening international diplomacy and cooperation. Which president used his stature as the hero of New Orleans to gain national fame? Answer: Andrew Jackson. The feisty frontier-born Jackson earned this lofty title for his role in defeating the British Army in a famous battle during the War of 1812. His successful campaign for, and election to, the office of the presidency proved that leaders with military prowess appealed to the electorate. The 7th president was the second battlefield commander after George Washington to become commander-in-chief. Who was the first in a long line of lawyers to become president? Answer: John Adams. Like many other early presidents, Adams was apprenticed as a lawyer after college. It wasn't until later in the 19th century that it became customary to have a law school degree. 25 of our nation's 44 leaders have had legal training. Which president popularized the term "okay"? Answer: Martin Van Buren. Van Buren was born in Kinderhook, New York. After he went into politics, he became known as Old Kinderhook. It is said that the term OK is based on this nickname, although the expression may have already existed and Van Buren's moniker simply increased its popularity. The original usage could have been an abbreviated and intentionally misspelled stand-in for all correct. Which president was a popular Hollywood film star before entering politics? Answer: Ronald Reagan. The handsome son of an Illinois shoe salesman, Reagan did not follow in his father's footsteps. After college, he worked as a radio announcer, and in 1937 he headed out to Hollywood to work for Warner Brothers. Reagan made more than 50 movies for the big screen. Among his co-stars were his first wife, Jane Wyman, and his second wife, Nancy Davis. He later became head of the Screen Actors Guild, a dress rehearsal for his future roles as Governor of California and President of the United States.